on stage. Sure. Welcome to Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade. You can call me Jim. And why do I have a show called Calm Down? I think the world is too uptight. This country is too uptight. People are too uptight. We just can't talk to each other the way we used to. We used to be able to have conversations without getting upset. But that's not so much the case anymore. People get agitated. People get anxious. And once you get anxious and agitated, you don't make good decisions. Sometimes you say things that you regret. And so calming down has been one of the things that I can do. I've learned how to calm down. The trick of the trade for me is to take a deep breath. And the mind can calm the body, and the body can calm the mind. But there's another reason. It's an ulterior motive. I have an ulterior motive because I want you to buy this book, Freedom. Freedom by James Eade. Your Path to Recovery. It's a story of my descent into addiction and my ascent into recovery. And this recovery has not been easy. And there's been moments of anxiety and agitation that I can't deal with unless I calm myself down. And if I can calm myself, then life gets a lot easier. And, the descent into addiction can be slow at first. It's a gradual thing. And you don't really know what's happening. And then the descent gets steeper. And it gets a little bit muddier. And you start to slip and you start to fall. And you try to catch on to things and hold on. And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And sometimes you hit rocks. Sometimes you hit branches. And sometimes you think, oh, am I going to stop? I'm never going to stop. And who knows how far down I will go. But if you can stop, it's the first stage of your recovery. And from then, you learn tools and techniques. Now I have mine. I use mine to calm myself down. But what works for me may not work for you. And what works for you may not work for me. So we have to work on what works for us. Find it out. It could be a series of trial and error. But in any case, what you do is when you find what works for you, use it. Hold your head high, look people in the eye. And if they don't think it's a good technique, who cares? It works for you. Now, you can find what works for you, and that's another step on the road to recovery, to finding a peace and serenity that you may not have known in the past. But that's enough for me. And what we want to do now is bring on my special correspondent, Rick Rosner, and he's our senior correspondent from LA. So I'm going to bring Rick on now, if I can find my cursor. Rick.
Hey.
Hey, what's going on
So
here?
nothing. You've got addiction issues, and I've got OCD issues, which I'm happy not to have addiction issues, except for maybe beating off. The OCD issues are pretty crazy for me. I have to go to the gym 5 times a day. I go from gym to gym to gym to gym. It's ridiculous. I don't even have any muscles left, really. I mean, I used to be burly, but after Trump gave me 4 years of diarrhea, I'm pretty skinny. So I don't even know what I'm working out anymore. But my gripe, the thing that's pissing me off this week, is my own lack of reliability. We were supposed to tape this yesterday, but I totally spaced it out. I blew you off. I forgot. And I don't know that that's overly unusual for me. That my life I have a history of failing to follow through, or at least taking way too long to do it. I started my first book 47 years ago when I was 17. I still haven't finished it. I've got another book I started 10 years ago that I haven't finished, and it's a good freaking book. It's topical. I think it would sell. My wife, she started her first book 6 months ago. She's done. She knocked it off. My wife is highly reliable. And she's a blessing to me because her reliability covers my ass a ton. She's the one who gets on the phone and argues with insurance companies when we get bullshit charges for on our medical coverage. Um, but my lack of reliability, my fecklessness, it sucks. I should have been a great physicist, but I was too lazy to follow through and take all the physics I needed. I made it through an undergraduate degree, but you can't do freaking. It's hard to do physics with just an undergrad degree, and even that I didn't get till I was 30 because I was too freaking lazy. Um, so
Well, Rick, I don't know if you're lazy, and OCD.
I spin my wheels in stupid direct why to the gym 5 times a day. And that's over the past, without having missed a day, over the past 34 years. It's insanity. My wife had not my wife, my dad had OCD, and it was pens. He would carry 40 pens.
40.
You know, he wore a blazer, right? Just a suit jacket,
Sure.
10 pens inside pocket, 10 in the other inside pocket, another 10 in each outside pocket. The whole thing weighed like 3 pounds worth of pens. It would eventually rip the lining out of his jacket.
Whoa.
Um,
I'm sorry, we were having some technical difficulties.
that's all right. I mean, it's psychedelic. You're up in San Francisco, the home of the
Hey, that's
Grateful
fair,
Dead
man.
and Owsley
Stone's throw
Acid.
away.
If you're in, so
Well, I think 20 pens is enough. So I don't think 40 is a little excessive. Um, but OCD is nothing to sneeze at. And what's the coping mechanism that you have for it, if you do have one?
well, I mean, for OCD is often its own coping mechanism. I deal with OCD about going to the gym by going to the frickin' gym.
I see.
I mean,
So
I
you
have a deal
indulge.
where I prefer to turn right over left because my parents, when I was 6 years old, left me with a scary babysitter and to go to New York for a week, and I wanted the week to go faster, so I turned clockwise the way clocks go. And when they came home, I was just turning in circles and chanting to God. And ever since, I've got a preference for right turns. Um, so I mean, it takes various forms. I like certain numbers better than others.
Can you get me back?
But it's not debilitating totally the way it can be with some people where they can't even leave the house because they have to check to make sure the oven's been turned off, for like 8, 10, 20 times.
Right.
I'm not that bad off.
Yeah.
But
Preference.
really, I mean, the OCD is less of a overall life burden than my lack of focus or my focus on ridiculous bullshit. Like I sued Who Wants to Be a Millionaire because they asked me a question. And if you remember the format, they give you 4 possible answers. The question they asked me, the correct answer wasn't among the 4. And I'm like, F you. I've written for quiz shows. I know this is bullshit. And I spent a long time. I looked at 110,000 Who Wants to Be a Millionaire questions from around the world to confirm that my understanding of the question was the appropriate understanding. So I spent so much time on that. The odds of winning at any point in the lawsuit were, I'd say maybe a third or less, but still I pushed it. It also jeopardized my job because while I was suing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, an ABC show, I was writing for another ABC show. So it was, not the best like job strategy.
Well, this is the thing. We talk about addiction or OCD, is something like that, and it can affect your life. And when it starts to affect your life and has implications that manifest themselves in negative ways, you want to be able to rein that in somehow. And I think by being calm is the best way I can approach it. Do you have any way when you know that you're indulging yourself, say you're spinning to the right, and is there something that you can do mentally for yourself to say, I don't need to do this. I'm fine the
Yeah.
way I am.
So I mean, one way to do like is to pretend I'm a spy, and the way they can identify me is by my ticks and quirks,
Huh?
and so I can't give anything away.
Right. You don't want to tell at playing poker
Right.
is that you have tells, and
Yeah.
if you give away your tell, then they know.
Yeah.
They know what you're holding. So
Yes.
it's one of those things, but it's a mind over matter kind of thing. Do you think, or are you able to successfully do it at times?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, like 12 years ago, I was on a show called Obsessed about people with ridiculous OCD.
Uh huh.
And like every episode, um, they focused on two people. And the other person in my episode was a lady who had like extreme issues with how dirty pooping is. And every time she pooped, she had to get in the shower for 2 hours and jam a toothbrush up her butt to make
Oh
so
my goodness.
um,
Yeah,
so
yeah. It's a visual that I'm trying to get out of my head right now, but
yeah.
I
So
don't mean to
I'm
make
not
fun
as
of anything like this because it was horrible for her. So,
yeah, but the part of the show was I sat in therapy with a behavioral therapist,
uh-huh.
and he got me at the time. I was going to the gym 7 and 8 times a day.
Okay.
So he was pissed at me by the end because he couldn't get me to cut it down to once a day or to skip a day altogether. But he did get me to drop it from 8 times a day to 5 times a day. So it was a partial victory to him for him, even though he didn't see it that way.
But how
So
did he get you?
I'm back up to 6 and 7 because a new gym just opened a third of a mile from me, and it's only $10 a month. So I couldn't resist.
Right. See, this is the other thing when we call these are triggers. These are types of things that if you're trying to fight something and some stimulus comes along, how do you resist it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when COVID shut down all the gyms,
Yeah.
I had to still be able to go to 5 gyms a day. So I set up a gym downstairs with certain equipment, and then I set up one in our attic. And so I considered that two separate gyms, and I just like do I do a workout downstairs, and then I go upstairs. And
Hmm.
for a while I do like the parks in Los Angeles have workout equipment, so I'd go there until they shut down the parks.
Well, Rick, aren't you incredibly ripped now with all this working out?
I am. Except I had a medical procedure that knocked out one of my abs.
Right.
But I don't know. Can you see? Like, you probably can't.
Wow, I
The
see your
lighting's
abs.
not. But
Yeah.
I've got a 5 pack right now because one of my abdominal nerves got frozen to death, and it may grow back, it may not.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was a medical intervention that it was better to have five
Oh
abs.
yeah, it's a small price to pay.
Yeah.
Frustration is that I'm hot, I'm fucking ripped, but my wife remains unimpressed because she sees all the craziness that goes into it.
Yes.
She also notes that my ass has entirely gone away.
So
In
she's cost
some,
benefit analysis. You're coming up with too much cost.
I mean, she just like she doesn't think it's super duper hot. She's not, and she, like I said, like in certain, you know, late middle aged men, your ass goes away. So I basically have no ass. Like I have a hard time sitting on a metal chair.
I get you. Yeah, I don't have that particular problem, but I can relate to it. Um, and the idea that you have something that you struggle with on a daily basis, right? This isn't something that pops up now and then. It's like,
Right? No, it's I have to go to the gym 5 times. I'm on 4 so far. I need to go at least one more time.
okay. And what happens if you don't? What happens if you
I
stay?
feel if it's um I think in the last like 12 years I've only made it to the gym 4 times, like 6 days.
Mm-hmm. And
So
what?
I don't like it, but I can deal with it. Um,
This is the key.
I haven't missed a day at the gym since January 2nd, 1991.
Wow.
I'm sorry, January 20th.
Yeah, I was going to fact check you on that,
Okay.
but
I mean, one time I had to, this was before 9/11, to keep my streak going. I had to work out, I had to do pull ups in the galley of a passenger jet to Hong Kong.
wow.
I had to sneak back there and do pull ups hanging off of like the plane, not out. And, you know, of course, after 9/11, that they would shut that down really quick. But
Absolutely.
that was before when things were a little bit more relaxed.
Right. Well, that you just used the word relaxed, and it doesn't sound like you're relaxed, Rick. Is that a correct analysis from San Francisco?
I run, you know, kind of hot, but I take an adrenaline blocker for my blood pressure, which helps me chill. You know, I run hot, but I don't generally get pissed at the people around me. I get pissed about politics.
There's a
I used to
debate
get more.
tonight. There's a debate
Yeah,
tonight, Rick.
I used to get more pissed at other drivers,
Oh yes,
but
right,
now I consider it kind of a lost cause.
right. Because
You
you're
know,
not going to
because
change the jerk's behavior if they're a jerk to begin with.
that's right. Plus, like jerky behavior since COVID has kicked up so much that I just can like. All right, here's my reasoning: 2/3 of adult Americans are overweight or obese. Right? When that high a percentage of people has a problem, it's not an individual problem. It's something about the world we live in. Yeah. And the deal is, it's because food is cheap and delicious. If you look back at the history of food in the 1940s, 50s, it was disgusting. It was so like Jell-O molds filled with corn.
Yeah, I remember
it's just awful stuff. And then food science came along and they figured out what's delicious and how to make everything just taste freaking great. And so now we're fat, unless we have OCD. It's the same thing with cell phones. It used to be one person being a dick with his phone was an asshole. Right. Now everybody's being a dick. So it's not any one person's problem. It's because you can't, cell phones are too attractive. So that's my reasoning with driving. If it's just a few people being dicks, then it's those people's fault. If everybody's being kind of a dick and not paying attention, then it's a phase change. It's society's fault, not any one dickhead's fault.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, we often come to the conclusion, what can we change and what can't we change? And if we can change something, then we often attempt to, even that's not always the best thing to do. But if we can't change it, we might as well accept it and not get agitated by it. That's something that I'm working on. It's like, you know, just not.
I mean, I don't know. We can't change Donald frickin' Trump, but I still get super agitated. We can beat him in the election, but right. You know, my wife is like, you know, you can't. And I go, well, I can tweet. And if I tweet enough, maybe I'll change a few people's minds, you know, and it's certainly more effective than sitting there writing postcards, asking people to vote. I did that once. I did not like that. And like, there's no way that I'd make cold calls. That would be brutal. Yeah. Or door knocking, you know, I mean, you know, all praise to people who can do that.
I did that once. But, you know, so this is the 12th and final episode of season 1, Rick. And if there's one thing that you would want to leave the viewers with for the season 1, and I'm hoping that you'll be back for season 2. We're going to take a short break between seasons, but of course.
Yeah, I'd love to come back.
Thank you. Because
all right, so
you are the
all right. So if there's a lesson, it's find your technology. You have a technology that's largely internal and spiritual to help yourself so your head doesn't explode.
Right.
My technology is go to the gym a zillion times, give in to the OCD. there's worse things to be like, I it's not terrible to go to the gym a bunch. It's ridiculous, but and I take a blood pressure medication that blocks adrenaline, so I'm less pissed. And I take naps and I jerk off, and I fantasize and pretend I'm a spy, and none of these are Zen. You're Zen. I'm not, but I do have a non-Zen tech for like getting through the day.
That's the message we're trying to reach out to people with, and calm down. Find what works for you. All right,
Yeah.
Reed. Well, thank you so much. We'll take a short break between now and season 2, but I'll reach out to you very soon. You've been
All
great.
right. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for all your help in season 1.
And thanks for having me. I liked it.
Welcome to this segment of Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and I'm joined by my friend and yoga and therapist and instructor, Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira, this is the last episode of season 1, and how are we going to wrap up this season?
Well, Jim, you and I met in terms of a program around yoga and the 12 steps.
Yes.
And there are 12 steps, but only 10 yamas and niyamas,
right?
5 of each. So, however, there are 2 other yoga practices that fit beautifully and perfectly into steps 11 and 12. And so it seems like a good idea for us to have a little bit of a conversation about those 2 practices, where they fit in and how they relate to the 12 steps perhaps, but they stand on their own as well. So
okay, that sounds like a great plan.
All
Step
right.
11 is my favorite, so not that we're supposed to have favorites, but I do.
Hey, I get it, because I'm not supposed to have favorites with the yamas and niyamas, but I do.
Okay, so what are the 2 things that their names? I assume.
Well, the first one is sadhana. That's Sadhana. Sadhana is a very flexible term that literally means spiritual practices. All right. And however, for the yogi, it has a very definite look. When I say the yogi, I'm talking about for people who are following the path of yoga beyond yoga postures.
Right.
Now, that being said, yoga postures may very well be a component in someone's sadhana.
Sure.
The way that yoga postures actually fit into traditional yoga practice is not in terms of warrior pose or triangle pose or chair pose.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that. There were, I think, perhaps 5 original yoga postures. They were all poses in which one could sit in order to meditate or pray or chant.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the poses that you would naturally think of. The cross-legged poses, there's 3 of those.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody focuses on lotus posture because they've somehow seen it and feel like it somehow has to be done in order to practice yoga. It's not true. There are actually 3 different variations on cross-legged positions, and one of which is the lotus position. However, if someone is tweaking their knees to be in the lotus position because it looks like they're right, first of all, they're not practicing yoga. Second of all, they're not practicing ahimsa. They're harming their body.
Right.
So better to modify the body.
Right.
You can sit in a kneeling position, sitting back on your heels, either with your heels together or your heels apart. 2 different yoga postures. So those 5 make up pretty much all of the original yoga postures. when it comes to sadhana, it's about finding what works for you to stay focused, on what is true, what is permanent, what is important. We talked about some of these qualities in the last program. And, so let me read to you step 11, which I know you don't need it read to you, but just to put it into context. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And the way that looks for a yogi is that we have on a daily basis a time that we set aside, and ideally a place or a space that we set aside for our spiritual practice, for sadhana. Now, what is from the beginning of the sadhana to the end of the sadhana, what's included is really a matter of, this is where the last practice we talked about, swadhyaya, comes in handy, because one needs to understand what is working for me, what is really effective. And so that for me, doing a few yoga postures, I have a harmonium, which is a little field organ, a little small instrument. I don't play well, but I play enough to be able to do a chant.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer, so yoga postures and the chanting might be part of my sadhana. What will always be part of my sadhana is prayer. What will always be part of my sadhana is meditation.
Mm-hmm.
What will always be part of my sadhana is some sort of spiritual reading or inspiration. And what will always be part of my sadhana is my altar.
Mm-hmm.
And on my altar, I will have things that are of spiritual value to me, things that remind me of what is permanent and true. So on my altar, I have images of my gurus. I have candles for light. I sometimes have flowers. I often have incense. I may be out on a walk in nature and find a pine cone that just calls out to me and says, look how beautiful I am.
Mm-hmm.
Or a seashell, or a rock.
Right.
I bring it home. I clean it up. I put it on my altar, and there it becomes nature on my altar. So that's, sort of how my sadhana looks. But here's the thing. Sadhana is not a brick building. Sadhana is much more of, are you a Harry Potter fan?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Before they get to the Quidditch match,
Mm-hmm.
Ron's dad brings
Mr.
a tent.
Weasley.
The Weasleys, yes.
Yeah.
He puts up this tent, and Harry looks at it from the outside, and there's a bunch of them, 8 or 9 of them, and it looks like a one-room tent. But you walk inside that tent, and it's a palace.
Yes. Yes.
Or at least a very large, comfortable space.
Right.
And it has many rooms in it.
Right.
And you can spend time in one room or a time in another, but
Mm-hmm.
you're always in the tent.
Right.
On the outside, it looks like a modest little thing. And so sadhana is kind of like that. Is that you figure out, well, today I want to go into this room, and I'm always going to go in this room because it always feels good.
Mm-hmm.
But then there might be these other rooms that I also want to go into and spend some time because I like the view. I like the music that's being played here.
Right.
Or I like the way this place smells.
Uh-huh.
So these all are just different ways. So, I suspect that I know you've landed on a sadhana.
Yeah.
What does your sadhana look like?
Well, one of my sadhanas includes affirmations. It's part of my
Beautiful
regular spiritual journey. And, I do this early in the morning. I just throw on my outside clothes and go for a half hour, 45-minute walk. And I say these sayings in my head. And one of the first ones is to give thanks for being reminded that I have work to do. Because in the beginning of my sadhana, it feels like work. It feels like, oh, here I have to do all this stuff. And, and I know better. But now it's a habit. I just do it without struggling with do I want to do it or not do it? I just do it. And so once I get started, it flows. And from there, I have all these things. A lot of them are to give thanks, thank you for being reminded is the first thing that I say or thank you. I say, dear same, Source and Mother Earth. It's an acronym for that. Thank you for reminding me. And then something that I would forget if I didn't say it daily. I would not practice if I didn't say it daily. And so once I complete that, then I go through my chakras from the root to the crown. And each one, I feel the energy rising. Each chakra, the energy rises until I make conscious contact. And this is step 11, conscious contact. Once I asked a room, how does it feel? How do you know when you make conscious contact? And everyone answered, they give different answers, but none of them actually addressed the question. And it was very, so I haven't asked it since, because I think, how do I know when I make conscious contact? Because what I experience is not just calmness, peace, and serenity, but I actually feel joy, which was a foreign feeling to me, one that I had not experienced. I had experienced euphoria, but not the same kind of joy that I experience now when I'm in selfless service to others, when I'm helping others who are struggling to help ease their pain and suffering. And this type of joy is a better high than I ever had before.
Well, I love that. I mean, that's beautiful. And if we were to take my example of the sadhana and yours, I think that we would take different components and they would line up perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an interesting practice, and there's certain spiritual teachers out there in the world today. I'm thinking of Eckhart Tolle in particular, whose primary message is be present.
Yes, be here now. Remember.
Well, right. Ram Dass's very first little book that a few of us are old enough to remember. Be here now. And his basic message was stop thinking about the past and future.
Right.
And when we are practicing Swadhyaya, which we covered in the last program, when we are practicing sadhana, and when we are practicing nishkam karma, which we'll get to in just a moment, when we are practicing these things, we are present.
Yes.
Presence is required. I'll share a little quote that I came across. The present time is not when we live, but what we do when we invite God to do it with us.
Wow. I have a saying, if I can intrude. Please. I just want to say it's one of the things I tell myself each morning on my walk is the past is paralyzed, the future fraught, the present is a gift. So be here now, remember. And the difficulty that I experience is my ability to forget, to be here now. But any point in any day, I can remember to be here now.
It's one of the reasons that in my particular path of yoga, that there's a strong emphasis placed on taking seclusion once or twice per year. The reason for taking seclusion is to give yourself a break. And oftentimes when I take seclusion, if I go on seclusion for 2 weeks, it takes me at least, and I mean at least 2 days, to get into the present moment. For my mind to stop thinking about all the activities that were left undone, or that didn't come out the way I wanted them to, or maybe the successes I had, and to realize that none of that is of any importance to this moment right now. And when that moment comes, and again, it's usually about day 3, and then I can begin to practice swadhyaya, which again we covered in the last class, is self-awareness, moment by moment, of thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Right.
And I have the time then, the consciousness, to invite the divine into whatever I'm doing. And it goes even further than that, Jim. It becomes a matter of everything I am doing, everything I'm thinking, every feeling I have is a feeling that's moving through me that I'm receptive to.
Yes. Right.
And the end result is that, and these only come in moments. I've never found a way for them to happen for longer stretches of time usually. But it comes into a place of being in a state of grace, which is a state of closeness with the divine.
Yes.
I'm using the word divine on purpose because the word is it may be important. I mean, for me to say my guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, it is important to me, but to say divine it tends to be comfortable for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
God is a word that comes with a lot of baggage for a lot of folks. But to be aware of the divine, is something I think that we can all.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yes, because I have that issue with the God word, but I have no trouble with the divine.
Yeah.
And I'm not alone in that.
So absolutely not. I have one of the realities about this path of yoga is that it is simply a path of universal truths.
Mm-hmm.
When one learns those truths and then goes back to any religion, not the practices or the people involved in them, but the true teachings, the underlying teachings, Yogananda brought a conscious, by conscious choice, he was given the mission to bring together the teachings of Christ, not the way that Christians behave or act, but rather the teachings of Jesus.
Yes.
And showing that they are identical in the truth from the teachings of Krishna.
Yes.
Which is to say that things, for example, like we can experience the divine in many different ways.
Right.
As love, for example, as joy. You mentioned joy earlier.
Yes.
And when one is feeling that connection with the divine, everyone, no matter what religion they were born into, when one achieves that connection, there will be an experience of one of those aspects of the divine: joy, wisdom, calm. I think calm is in your program's name, isn't it? Yeah. And those are aspects that sort of are. We all know what a Venn diagram is.
Yeah.
And it's that area in which the sphere of the divine and the sphere of me as a human being overlap, and where I can experience that aspect of the divine as joy or bliss. And sadhana is just one of the ways that when we carve out time in our daily life, that we consciously and intentionally get better at having an experience, a reconnection every single day. And in my world, ideally, we do that at least twice, sometimes 3 times per day. But then there's also this matter, I'm switching now into Nishkam Karma. Just as surely as the niyamas are primarily internal practices, so sadhana is primarily an internal practice. Nishkam Karma like the yamas, is about how do I behave in the world?
Yes.
And Nishkam Karma is really about putting the yamas into action.
The 12 step.
Yes. And so it
all
is.
of our affairs.
And so there is 12, step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps or these practices, we tried to carry the message and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Now, I didn't say alcoholics there. That's what the step actually says. But of course, the nature of addiction is, and this is, I think it's important that we talk about this just a moment, that the nature of addiction is a many layered reality of being a human. That one can get addicted to things that are physical, such as substances, alcohol, drugs, and so on. One can also get addicted to relationships, to feelings,
Sure.
and to think that my happiness depends on the presence of this other person, and this other person has to feel about me the way I feel about her or him.
A codependency. Yeah.
Yep. And that is a form of an addiction as well.
Sure.
Addictions come in all other forms, including, of course, foods. I mean, that's a big one for a lot of people.
Of course.
But any of our likes and dislikes can become addictive in nature. And that is to say that we can be negatively addicted to certain foods or certain people or certain places. We don't like them. And we can be positively addicted. I don't know if that's quite right, but we can be drawn to something so strongly that it really obscures our ability to see clearly excuse me, what is true and permanent within ourselves.
Our willpower is of no use. Yes.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Our willpower is of no use against this.
Absolutely not. And there's a predictable cascade of events,
yes,
that happens that when we expect something to go the way we want to, or we have an expectation someone is going to love me as much as I love him or her. And when that is thwarted, then certain things begin to occur. First, I become hurt. Then I become angry. And anger turns into, and it goes downhill from there. Eventually, resentment, spite, all these things. And so you find people who are madly in love. They make the headlines all the time. People who have finally gotten together. And boom, suddenly they're saying the most horrible things about each other to the entire world.
Right.
Well, was that ever love? Of course not. But the addiction that yoga addresses is the addiction to the material world.
Right.
And to the expectation that the material world is permanent. So Nishkam Karma is how we move through this impermanent physical world in a way that causes no harm, in a way that is true to that divine that has become you and me and every atom of creation. Nishkam Karma is about not taking things that isn't ours. That's one of the yamas. It's even about, apparently there are reality shows on TV that focus on people who hoard things. All right.
I've heard that. Yeah.
And it always makes me sad that people are getting entertainment from a level of suffering that people have over an addiction to stuff, as if, and it's horrible to think that stuff that's in a storage locker that I never open, I can't let go of, or that I've turned my house into a series of little warrens and pathways where, because newspapers or magazines or stuff is stacked up so high, floor to ceiling, I can't go anywhere else. And so Nishkam Karma is about moving through the world in a way that allows us to carry, and this is the next of the yamas, to flow with the divine. Nishkam karma is, it's usually translated as selfless service.
Hmm.
And that's
it's the phrase I've adopted. Yes.
Yeah. It's not bad, but it's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's about feeling that sense of the divine flowing through you as you move throughout the day. And whatever you are doing for others, for animals, for plants, simply picking up a piece of litter off the ground. All right. That may be all it requires to practice Nishkam karma. I'm not picking this piece of litter up in order to feel good about myself.
Right.
I'm picking this piece of litter up because of the fact it doesn't belong there, and the presence of the divine will be more easily present.
Yeah.
And the slippery slope of Nishkam karma is that last of the yamas, which is aparigraha, non-attachment,
right.
Because we can even become proud of our selfless service.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritual pride.
False humility too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, this practice of sadhana and Nishkam karma are really about the niyamas. How do we behave internally?
Right.
How do we cultivate a space within myself that I'm aware of and where there is room for the divine to always be present?
Yes.
Then how do I take that divine presence within me and express it in my actions through the world?
And there is a divine presence within all of us. And I believe that this is what helps me if I become spiraling down with self-criticism, doing self-harm. This is what the reminder that, I have the ability to channel the divine. So don't get in the way with that stuff. Don't let that stuff block the presence of the divine within me or block my ability to get in touch with it.
You pointed to a powerful tool, and there are specific tools that are helpful.
Yes.
To carry with you throughout the day. You mentioned one earlier, affirmations. If you don't have one, it's okay. Do you have a favorite affirmation?
I don't have a favorite, no, but I do practice multiple ones. But one of them, and you can tell me how it begins, but it's getting into the eternal now is the conclusion of the affirmation. I rise above all thought of past and future into the eternal now.
Yes. And so we oftentimes find it's, we often will speak about a spiritual toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
And yes. Affirmations are the tools in your spiritual toolbox. Chanting is another. When I go to the grocery stores or, Costco, wherever you are, there is a lot of energy and it's a lot of material stuff.
Right.
So one of the ways that I stay in a place of sadhana and Nishkam karma, where there is a space for the divine to be present, is I will oftentimes chant quietly as I move through the store.
Interesting.
Or I will use an affirmation. Usually it's a chant because chants are like affirmations put to music.
I'm going to put that down for me to remind me to try that. I've never tried that.
And so there's a little chant. Lord, I am thine, I am thine, I am thine. Lord, I am thine, I am thine. Be thou mine, oh, be thou mine. And so, it's a simple little chant, and I'm not singing out loud.
Oh, no. Yeah, right.
But rather it's carried within me, and it keeps my mind and my heart in attunement with one another, and it keeps me from getting caught up in the materiality of the world around me.
Right.
So, and affirmations are another powerful one. We walk from place to place many times throughout the day.
Yes.
All right. We get up out of a chair and we go to our car. We get from the car, we walk to wherever we're going. And it can become a great habit to carry an affirmation with you and use it in that time. An affirmation I carry with me, that I go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time I need it.
Mm.
When things go well or don't go well, that affirmation fits.
Yes.
And so it's one that I tend to default to. Anyway,
It's not always what you want; it's what you need.
Absolutely, and that's one of the secrets of overcoming addiction, is to recognize that the suffering that one goes through has value. And what I'm meaning is not. A lot of us tend to look at suffering as being something to avoid, and it's true.
Yeah.
You don't want a great suffering just on purpose.
Right.
That's why, Jesus would have never. Let me not go there. I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
All right. But we don't want to intentionally create suffering.
Right.
But suffering in this world is going to occur.
Yes.
And by suffering, I mean things don't go the way we want them to.
Right.
And so how do we become accustomed to taking that and turning it to our benefit? That's the practice of one of the niyamas, tapasya.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take this thing that feels bad and I'm going to take the lead of this thing that is making me suffer. I'm going to turn it into the gold of expansion.
You're an alchemist.
Yeah, exactly. And did you watch the Olympics when they were on? The Paralympics are now.
Yes.
Right now, so many of these athletes, when you get their backstory, that's what they've done.
Absolutely.
And they are inspiring because of that.
Yes. This is so true.
Yeah. So sadhana, daily practice, and it's about taking care of the internal reality.
That job, right?
Nishkam karma is taking that internal reality of the divine and being a vessel, a channel.
And practicing.
One of the we can end with this is that there's a simple teaching about Nishkam karma, that the channel is blessed by that which flows through it. And that is to say that we are blessed. We are blessed when we become channels for positivity, for divinity, for love, for joy, moving through us to spread that into the world.
That's beautiful. I'm writing it down. One last thing before we go. Yeah. I want you to, we both read a book, The Autobiography of a Yogi.
Yes.
And that is by your guru?
It is. And it is this guy.
Yes.
Paramahansa Yogananda. This picture, by the way, was taken moments before his Mahasamadhi, which is the conscious exit of a yogi from a material form back to the immaterial form.
That's amazing.
And
wow.
But the autobiography of a yogi, that picture is just full of a lot of divine feeling.
Yeah.
When you look into his eyes in particular. But the autobiography of a yogi is a book that was published in 1946, and in the nearly 80 years since its publication, has helped people move spiritually along their spiritual path.
Yes.
Not his spiritual path.
Right.
Their spiritual path.
Your path.
And sometimes, for me, for example, when I read that book, I found my spiritual path. And for others, Yogananda always remains part of it, but their spiritual path might include, here I'll share with you that here in Palo Alto, the Ananda Temple, that is now the Ananda Temple on the corner of College and El Camino,
Right.
you know, it looks like a Catholic church because it was. And you look up and you have a spire, just like it was a mission style church.
Right.
And but up on top of it, instead of seeing a cross, there's now an Om symbol up there. When we, that is, I say we, the Ananda community, were first looking at that church, the Archdiocese of San Francisco was selling the property, as they were doing at that time, still probably are.
Yes.
They were selling the property, and so it felt like ours. And one of the things that said, yes, this is ours, when we were touring through the priest quarters, on the bookshelf of one of the priests was the autobiography of a yogi.
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful.
And so
not a coincidence.
The AY, or the autobiography of a yogi, is universal in its impact for people, and yet manifold in the way in which it can direct people to where they're supposed to go.
I want to do, while you're here, a commercial break for me. And that's the book I wrote, Freedom, Your Path to Recovery. It's not my path.
Yes.
It's your path. You just got to find it and walk it. With your head held high, looking people in the eye. Don't let anyone tell you that your path is not the path to walk. It's inside that you'll know if you're taking a false step or not.
You know, the curious thing, though, is that statement, you can put a number of words after it: your path to recovery, your path to joy,
yes,
your path to happiness.
Yes.
If the path is explored by the ego, it will never work out.
Right.
And so when people say that, oh, every path is unique, that is true when it is a spiritual path. Every spiritual path may look different, but every spiritual path will have predictable stages along the way. Every path that is of the ego will predictably not turn out well for someone or everyone.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Yudhishthira. You have made such a contribution to season 1 of Calm Down. And I will be in contact with you about season 2, and we will see each other again, I'm certain. All right. So I will just take you backstage and saying, what is the saying? Not to say goodbye, but until we meet again.
Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste. Thank you again. All right. I hope you got as much as that as I out of that as much as I did. And this is the end of season 1, episode 12. So come back when you're ready for more, because there's more to come. Welcome to the final segment of Calm Down. And I want to introduce to you, my loyal listeners and viewers, Divya Love Wise, that wise yogi. And I would like you, at the end of every show, I'm a little bit agitated and worked up and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if there's something that you could do to calm me down. Could you just say goodbye to us in any way that you see fit?
Sure, I would love to.
I will take off and let you do that. Thanks again.
Okay. Well, bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, feeling your feet on the floor and letting your hands rest in your lap. palms up or palms down, is a great way to start bringing yourself back into center and focus with your own divine energy, and letting go of anything that might have wanted to stick to us throughout the day that may be energy we don't want to carry throughout the day. So having this basic position, feeling grounded, even closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one of the ways we can bring ourselves back to center is observing with our senses what we can feel, the temperature of the air in the room, observing any sounds that you hear. Noticing any smells in the air. And then bring your awareness to your breath. As though you're watching it from the inside out. Watching the inhale wash into the body, and watching the exhale wash out of the body. Just like the waves of the ocean as they wash onto the shore. And if you find your mind still wandering, you can even place one hand on your lower belly and one hand on your heart, so that you can feel with your hands this breath washing in and washing out. And with your mind's eye, visualize this inhalation and exhalation as an internal shower, clearing away your energy so that it's refreshed, it's rejuvenated, and it's restored. Releasing your hands into your lap, just give yourself a few seconds of pause in this return to peace, enjoying it. When you are ready, you can open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes, feeling grounded in your body, grounded in the best part of yourself, and you can go out into the world and carry that best part in the forefront of your mind and your heart.